Over the last few weeks, I've been asking people to submit questions and ideas for future videos. One thing kept popping up over and over again. Different countries, different fish, different pond sizes, different climates, but the same basic question. Why is my pond water green and what can I do about it? Some people had bog filters, some people had store-bought waterfall filters, some had added beneficial bacteria constantly, some had used store filters with UV built in, some had inherited old ponds, and some people had built new ponds. But the question about green water kept popping up. So today I want to go through the reasons why that might be and what you can do to fix it. But first, if you don't already know me, my name is Kev and I help people build and maintain their ponds without spending a fortune. So if that sounds like something that interests you, you might like to subscribe and be sure to visit my website ozponds.com. If your pond water is green, it just means that the conditions are favourable for single-celled algae to grow. These single-celled organisms float around inside the water. They need a certain nutrient combo to thrive: carbon, light, nitrogen and phosphorus. But they aren't the only thing competing for these resources. Hair and string algae want those nutrients too. Some people call it blanket weed. This string algae attaches to surfaces, and the mats can physically trap particles, and they can potentially beat out the small single-celled algae that are floating around. Cyanobacteria is another competitor. Cyanobacteria make people think of toxic algae blooms, like the dreaded blue-green algae. But there are thousands of different species, and only a tiny fraction of them are toxic. In fact, without cyanobacteria, we wouldn't be here. There's a marine species of cyanobacteria that scientists estimate produce roughly 20% of the Earth's oxygen. That's a higher percentage than all the Earth's rainforests combined. And then there's bacteria. These bacteria process nitrogen inside the pond, break down waste, and they're also competing for those same resources. So we have an intense competition for nutrients, and if the water is green, it just means that the single-celled algae is the one that's winning. There are certain conditions that make it possible for one or another of these competing elements to get the upper hand. For example, we know that nitrifying bacteria that process nitrogen inside the pond need surface area and oxygen. So if we have lots of wet surfaces that these bacteria can attach themselves to, and then we move oxygen-rich water past them, they do a phenomenal job at processing that nitrogen. They can take ammonia, turn it into nitrite, and then nitrate. These are all forms of nitrogen, but the single-celled algae that causes green water can more easily use ammonia than it can nitrate. We also know that single-celled algae need sunlight to photosynthesize, so we could limit sunlight. We know that single-celled algae can thrive in colder water when these nitrogen-processing bacteria are more dormant. We know that plants can consume nitrogen and phosphate that feed single-celled algae, and we know that copper kills algae. We also know that intense UV light can kill it as well. So we do have treatment options, but none of these will fully remove or process the nutrients. Although there are bacteria that live in oxygen-poor environments that will turn the nitrogen into a gas, and it can leave the pond that way. But it seems to me that the best approach is to encourage the intense competition between these nutrient-hungry organisms. If they all exist and they all compete, one group doesn't dominate the pond. We also know that all these nutrient sponges take the nutrient and convert it into food for higher level organisms. They in turn become food for bigger and more complex animals like fish, tadpoles, dragonfly larvae, etc. So the more I learn about different topics, the more it seems to me that everything is the same. In our bodies, if we eat a diversity of foods, we're healthier. We feed all kinds of different bacteria living inside us, the more diversity the better. In finance or money markets, competition leads to innovation. If we starve competition, we become lazy and new technologies or insights aren't explored. So our ponds are living things governed by the same rules. So we want to foster that competition and diversity. In my ponds, I design them in a way that promotes that diversity. I'll use plants, substrates, I'll move water through filters designed to provide habitat for bacteria, fungi, tiny organisms that feed on waste, algae and bacteria. The aim is to create a low-maintenance system that will thrive without my constant intervention. I don't want to constantly monitor water parameters and clean pumps or filters. Now all of this is a balancing act, and it's nature, so it can take time and patience, but the rewards are so worth it. I have a system that I use to build all my ponds, and it's helped thousands of people all over the world. Ponds don't need to be complex or expensive, and you can learn more about it and read their stories on the Ozponds website if you're interested. But I do get comments from people that say, well, that's great for you, Kev, but I live in a freezing cold area of the world. Will your methods work for me? And I can make no promises or guarantees. I just share what works for me and has worked for thousands of other people. But even if you didn't believe me, no matter what part of the world you live in, if there's a natural body of water, a stream, a lake, a pond, reservoir, whatever, that's a beautiful spot to be, the water looks healthy, the wildlife is abundant, and it fits perfectly into the wider ecosystem. If you can think of an example like that in your region, then it is possible to replicate it. And if you look really closely at a stream, lake, pond, whatever in nature, you're going to see that there is diversity. There is algae, there are areas where sediments settle, there's probably plants, there's probably water movement. And if you really look for it, you're going to find microscopic life, things feeding on that life, and things feeding on that life, constantly moving nutrients up the food chain. So my own ponds aren't algae-free, they aren't sediment-free. They are ecosystems that use up that nutrients that's available to them and push it up the food chain. And it is possible to have too much nutrient and therefore fuel too much algae. That's probably the biggest problem natural waterways face in this era. We have intense farming and fertilisers that can dump tremendous amounts of nitrogen and phosphate into the waterways, and that can fuel way too much growth. In our own ponds it's the same. If we add more fish food than the system can handle, we create imbalances. Too many fish, turtles, ducks, whatever, the same thing. We might have a water source that is high in nutrient. Even the water off your roof that you use to top up the pond may be picking up nutrients from bird poo, roofing material, or just the dust that's settled up there. There really are so many possibilities for where that nutrient's coming from. Seasonal changes are another big one. I always get more algae in my bog filters and in my streams in the winter when the bacteria are less active. In the tropics it might occur when the monsoon rains come, or it might be that they benefit the system by providing a constant supply of fresh clean water. In an arid environment it might be a lack of rain and water exchange that causes nutrients inside the pond to build up. As part of that system that I mentioned earlier, I also created an AI virtual Kev or KevBot, as well as a private community, and that way you can troubleshoot problems and make the system work for your individual needs. The more people we get in there following the same principles and framework, the better off it becomes at solving problems, and it's a great way to support my mission to help people build and maintain their ponds without spending a fortune. I often use the issues I see people struggling with to create new content. But that's enough plugging the way I like to build my ponds. So what can you do if you just want a magic bullet? I mentioned earlier that highly concentrated UV light will kill single-celled algae. You just buy one that matches the flow rate of your pump. This is important because the light needs a certain amount of contact time with the algae to kill it, and the higher the wattage, the stronger the light. These wattage numbers are based on the pond's volume, not the flow rate of the pump. However, the flow rate of the pumps should be always sized in relation to the type of filter and the pond you are running. And I do have a bunch of free pond calculators on the Ozponds website. If you click on this free tools tab, it can help get you started. Another option is copper algaecides or ion generators. Again, these kill the algae, but they won't remove the nutrients. The algae will die and it will re-release the nutrients, so you end up kicking the can down the road and becoming dependent on the treatment, which is good if you're in the business of selling algaecides or ion generators. But you do need to be careful when you kill large amounts of algae because you remove oxygen from the pond. Remember, the algae is producing oxygen as it photosynthesizes. The dead algae can trigger a bacterial bloom as it feeds on the nutrients released from the dead algae. And like I mentioned earlier, the bacteria also want oxygen, so you have this double whammy, and you can quickly deplete the oxygen levels and cause a fish die-off, and the fish die-offs release more nutrient, and now you have this really bad death spiral going on. So it's really important to have an abundance of oxygen inside your pond whenever you're using these products. I did make a video that goes into more detail, so I'll put a link to that in the description, along with links to these products and some of the resources that are available on the website. So having aerators, pumps for water movement, and plants can all help increase oxygen levels inside the pond. Oxygen also gets used by those good bacteria, as we talked about earlier, so having good oxygen levels inside the pond is always a good idea because you'll help them compete with algae. Next, you've got oxidizers. In small doses, I've experimented with hydrogen peroxide, sodium percarbonate, and even ozone generators. These all have the potential to kill single-celled algae and string or hair algae, but they need to be used very cautiously. Again, I have videos and articles on that. Then you have bacterial or enzyme products, and these aim to seed and feed the bacterial populations that compete with single-celled algae. These are the safest option, but it can be a bit hit and miss. They have a shelf life, some strains are more potent than others, and some are more adapted to certain environments like colder water or warmer water. Again, having adequate oxygen is essential as they're going to consume it, and you don't want them to suffocate all other life in the pond. Another option some people like is to seed their new ponds with substrate, sludge or plants from an existing healthy water body to kickstart the system. But even if you did nothing, eventually different types of bacteria will make their way into the pond via dust, leaves, birds, other things. These bacteria do consume carbon from the water, and they need organic carbon like leaves and fish poo, and they also need inorganic carbon. And this is why people might add something like limestone, shell grit or coral to their ponds or aquariums, and I've made a video on that and written a few articles as well. And of course I should mention plants, because when you go on the forums everyone always says just add plants, and plants will certainly compete with algae for nutrients and sunlight, so they are a viable option. But in a lot of my ponds I want lots of open water, so I can't rely solely on plants alone. But I can still add them to the margins and inside the bog filters. Whereas if I'm not running a pump or a dedicated filter, then I use them extensively to help filter the water and maintain a balance. And again, there's information about how I set those up in prior videos and on the website. But I think I'll wrap that up here. I hope this video gave you some ideas if green water is a problem for you. I hope it was helpful, and if you'd like to see some of the critters that can help you export nutrient up the food chain, you might like to watch this video next. Thanks for watching. See ya.